Hey, deep divers, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting. We're going to be diving into the relationship between gender equality and, personality differences between men and women.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and, I think like a lot of people would kind of naturally assume that as societies become more equal, personalities would kind of converge, like men and women would become more similar.
Yeah, it seems intuitive, right? But the research we're looking at suggests that might not actually be the case.
Yeah, it's actually, it seems to be the opposite.
Exactly, and it's something called the gender equality paradox. Basically, we're seeing that countries known for having like really strong gender equality, I'm talking about places like Norway, Sweden.
Yeah.
Those places are actually showing greater personality differences between men and women.
Yeah, so to really get to the bottom of this, we're taking a deep dive into this research paper. It's called, let me see, Sex Differences in Personality Across Countries, Evaluating Surprising Patterns and Their Possible Explanations. Are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Small drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
When you sent in that article about personality differences between men and women, uh, I was a bit skeptical at first.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't more gender equality, you'd think it would make people more similar.
Right.
But then I kind of got hit with this, like, gender equality paradox.
Right.
It's more complicated.
It really is. It really challenges like what we think we know, right?
Totally. So before we, like, even get into the why,
Yeah.
let's just break down what are we even talking about here.
Yeah.
So when researchers look at personality, they use this thing called the Big Five.
Right.
And it's like 5 core traits. So like how neurotic somebody is, how extroverted they are, how open to new experiences they are, how agreeable and how conscientious.
Right. And so the research that we're going to be looking at is like how are these traits kind of spread out or distributed
Yeah.
between men and women in different societies?
Yeah.
And the crazy finding is that in countries with more gender equality, those differences on the Big Five, they actually get bigger.
Yeah. That's wild. So this study by Maggiola and Fajonius,
Yes.
they found a really strong correlation.
Strong, yeah, like a 0.69 correlation,
Wow.
which is pretty high.
Like for statistics, that's high.
Yeah, that's a strong connection.
So that's great. So it's like, imagine each country's a dot on a graph.
Okay.
The further right you go, the more gender equal the country is.
Okay.
But as you go further up,
Yeah.
the dots for men and women are like spreading apart.
Exact. It's like they're getting further and further away from each other.
That's wild. Okay, so we're talking averages here.
Yes, of course.
We're not saying like every woman is this or every man is
That
that.
exactly. It's not about stereotypes. It's just what we see kind of on average across big groups.
For sure. For sure. No personality type is better than another.
Yeah, definitely not.
We're just talking about these trends.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's like put on our detective hats
Okay.
and figure out why is this happening.
All right.
So the article that you sent in came some different angles. So one way to understand it is like think about the actual experience of women in these more gender equal societies.
Okay.
Like from a woman's perspective,
Yeah.
there's less pressure to conform to like what women should be like.
Right. So like you don't always have to be agreeable just to fit in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they have more freedom to kind of be themselves. And sometimes that means expressing traits that maybe are more statistically common among women.
Like what?
So like higher agreeableness or maybe a little bit more neuroticism.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. If you're not always told you have to be a certain way,
Yeah.
you're just going to be yourself.
Yeah. You're going to express your true self.
And maybe that self is higher on agreeableness or neuroticism.
Exactly.
Okay. So then for men, it's kind of the same idea, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in those societies, men might feel more comfortable
Hmm.
expressing some of those more traditionally masculine traits,
Like what?
like competitiveness or assertiveness.
Oh, okay.
And knowing that women are also being given the space to be themselves.
Totally. So it's like everyone's just free to be.
Yeah, to just be.
But then why does that make the differences bigger?
That's the question, right?
That's the paradox.
So this is where the choice and freedom hypothesis comes in.
Okay.
And that's the idea that when people are free from these gender constraints,
Mhm.
they're probably going to make choices that line up with how they naturally are.
So they can actually make choices that are good for them.
Yeah, exactly.
So like if a woman really likes taking care of others and she's really collaborative, maybe in a more gender equal society, she's more likely to go into like healthcare.
Right. Healthcare, education, things like that.
Because it fits her.
Exactly.
And it's not seen as unfeminine.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting because one of the mind-blowing things in the article was about STEM,
Yeah.
science, technology, engineering, math.
You'd think in gender equal countries, more women would go into STEM.
You would think, right? Because there's less bias
Mhm.
and there's more opportunity.
Yeah.
But the research shows the opposite.
Mhm.
Countries with high gender equality actually have fewer women enrolling in STEM.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, this choice and freedom hypothesis suggests that women with more choices aren't necessarily drawn to STEM fields just because they're allowed to be there now.
Right?
They're free to pursue things they genuinely like and are good at.
So if her personality is not a good fit for STEM,
Yeah,
she doesn't have to do it.
exactly.
That's so interesting. So it's not just about removing the barriers.
Right.
It's about opening up this whole world of possibilities.
Yes, giving people the freedom to choose.
Wow. So it makes you think about, like, the choices we make.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not just like robots.
Right, we have agency.
Okay, so this choice and freedom thing, that's just one part of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's just one piece.
So what are some of the other reasons for this paradox?
Well, this next one might be a little controversial.
Okay.
So buckle up. So some researchers think that evolution and biology could also be part of this whole paradox thing.
Okay, so tread carefully here.
Yeah,
I know evolution could be a touchy subject,
it can be.
but I'm curious, how does it connect to personality?
Well, it's not like we're saying genes are everything, but biology might be playing a role.
Along with all the social stuff we talked about.
Exactly. It's all intertwined.
Okay, so what's the main idea here?
Well, some evolutionary psychologists, they say that over a really long time, thousands of years,
Yeah.
certain personality traits might have helped men and women in their roles back then.
Okay, I see that. So men were more risk-taking because they had to hunt,
Yeah, that's the idea.
and women were more nurturing because they took care of the kids.
Right, exactly.
But how does that explain things now?
Right, that's the question.
Things are way different now.
They are, but here's the crazy thing from the article.
Okay.
Even in the most progressive countries
Mhm.
where everyone has equal opportunities,
Yeah.
we still see some of those old tendencies.
You mean in jobs and stuff?
Yeah, like in the labor market.
Okay, so more women in healthcare and education,
Right.
more men in engineering and finance.
Exactly.
But why though?
Well, even when you account for education and resources, it still kind of leans that way.
Wow. So maybe it's not all just social stuff.
Maybe not. It might be deeper than that.
So are we saying biology is destiny?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
It's more like biology might make you kind of lean towards certain traits.
Right, but it's not set in stone.
Exactly.
Like nature versus nurture.
Yes. Both are at play.
Okay, so if biology isn't the whole story,
Yeah.
what else is going on?
Well, the article talks about something called culture amplification.
Okay, what's that?
Basically, it's like society's norms and messages.
Mhm.
They can make those pre-existing differences even bigger.
Oh, so if we keep telling boys to be tough
Yeah,
and girls to be sweet,
exact.
it's going to affect how they act.
For sure. And it's not just parents saying these things.
Right.
It's the media, advertising, even toys.
Oh, yeah. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Even now.
Yeah. Even when we're trying to be more aware.
We can't escape it. So all those messages,
Yeah.
they can really impact how people develop.
They really can.
It's like society is saying, hey, if you're a woman, be more feminine.
Yeah.
And if you're a man, be more masculine.
Exact.
So even when we're trying to be equal,
We might actually be pushing men and women further apart.
that's so messed up.
It's a paradox, right?
It is. So we've got biology, we've got social stuff, we've got choices.
And we've got these cultural messages.
It's a lot.
It is. It's complicated.
Right, it's spinning.
Yeah, but there's one more thing to think about.
Okay, what's that?
Some researchers are like, hold on, maybe it's not that personalities are actually that different. Maybe it's how we're measuring them.
Ooh, okay, tell me more.
So in places where people are really educated,
Yep.
they might know more about personality tests and like looking inward.
Right.
So they might give more detailed answers on those tests.
So it seems like there's bigger differences.
Exactly. It's like if you never really thought about your personality, you might just say, oh, I'm masculine or I'm feminine.
Right, just those basic categories.
But if you really know yourself, you might see all those little things that make you unique.
Yeah, and different from other people.
Exactly. So maybe those bigger differences in gender equal places aren't because people are changing.
Right.
It's because we're getting better at measuring personality.
Okay, so we've got choice, freedom, evolution, culture, and measurement.
It's a lot, right?
It's a lot to think about.
It is. And honestly, it's probably all of those things together.
Yeah, it's never simple, is it?
Never. But this whole thing is so interesting.
It is. I feel like I'm seeing gender and personality totally differently now.
That's great. And I think this is where that IQ comparison in the article comes in.
Okay, got to be careful here.
Yeah.
This is a sensitive topic.
It is. But the article wasn't trying to rank people.
Right, it wasn't saying one group is smarter.
Not at all. It was just about effect size.
Can you explain that?
Sure. So effect size is like how big a difference is. Like imagine two groups of fans.
Okay.
One gets fertilizer, one doesn't. The difference in how tall they grow,
Yeah.
that's the effect size.
Okay, so it's like how much of a difference something makes.
That's it.
So they were using the IQ thing to show that the personality differences we're talking about, they're not small.
They're real. They're worth talking about.
But we can't just compare everything, right?
No, we can't just lump all these group differences together.
Like, personality is different from intelligence.
Exactly. They're separate things.
Okay, so we got to be careful about making those comparisons.
We do. We've got to focus on the details.
Yeah.
And remember, these differences are just averages.
Right.
They don't tell us anything about individual people.
Okay, so let's take a step back.
Okay.
We've learned so much about this gender equality personality paradox.
We have.
All those findings, those explanations, those comparisons.
It's a lot to process.
Listener, what are you thinking right now?
Yeah. What are your takeaways?
All right, so we're back, and I'm still kind of wrapping my head around this whole gender equality personality paradox.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, isn't it?
It is. Like, every time we dig deeper, it just gets more and more fascinating.
It really does. It shows just how complex we are as humans.
Yeah, and to go back to that IQ comparison for a second,
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that the article was just using that example to illustrate, like, the effect size.
Right, exactly. The magnitude of the differences.
Yeah, and even though both those personality differences and things like cognitive differences between groups are often explained using similar ideas about, like, evolution or social stuff,
Right.
we can't just assume those explanations are equally true for both.
Exactly. It's important to be careful about making those kinds of connections.
Yeah, we can't just lump all these group differences together.
Right, because they might be totally different things.
Exactly. Like, personality is different from intelligence.
Yeah, they're distinct domains.
Right, so we need to be super cautious about drawing parallels or making generalizations.
Absolutely, because each one is influenced by so many factors.
Okay, so we got to avoid those oversimplified explanations
Yeah.
and really focus on the nuances.
Exactly.
Okay, and another thing, we got to remember all these differences we keep talking about,
Mm-hmm.
they're just averages.
Right, it's about statistical trends.
Not about, like, judging individuals.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a minute.
Okay.
We've explored all this research on the gender equality personality paradox,
Mm-hmm.
those surprising findings, all the different explanations,
Yeah.
and those comparisons to, like, IQ scores and stuff.
A lot of food for thought.
Listener, what are your big takeaways from all of this?
Yeah. What are you thinking right now?
I think one of those important things is that progress isn't always linear.
Right. It's not always what we expected.
Like, we might assume that more gender equality would make men and women more similar.
Yeah. It seems logical.
But this research shows us it's not that straightforward.
Yeah. It's way more interesting than that.
It almost makes you wonder if those bigger personality differences could actually be a good thing.
That's a fascinating idea.
Like, maybe it's a sign of more freedom.
Right. More autonomy for individuals.
Exactly. So as we break down those old gender roles and expectations,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we're creating more space for people to just be themselves.
Yeah. To express their true selves.
Even if that leads to those greater statistical differences at the group level.
It's like we're seeing this blossoming of individuality.
Yeah, like a beautiful tapestry of human diversity.
I love that. And we've just scratched the surface here.
Totally. There's so much more to explore.
So many more layers to uncover.
Definitely. But I think we've given our listener a lot to ponder.
A lot to think about.
This is one of those topics that really stays with you.
Yeah. It makes you see the world differently.
So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
The gender equality personality paradox really highlights that interplay between nature and nurture.
Yeah, those forces that shape who we are.
It's a reminder that we're not just passive passengers in our own lives.
Right.
We're active participants making choices and shaping our own identities. That's pretty amazing.
It really is.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive, listener.
Yeah, thanks for sending in that article. It was a great one.
It sparked such an interesting conversation.
For sure. And until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.